Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and here I am going to be doing a brief video to compare these two PTZ controllers that you see before you. I cannot keep both of them, it just doesn't make sense, so I'm going to be making a choice based on my workflow. Yours might differ slightly, but I wanted to go and show these two PTZ controllers so that you can make a decision on what's going to be best for you. Pardon my crude setup here. I just used my band router here for my mixer, setting everything up, connected to the PTZ camera. We have the Avkans AV Pro, and then the Tenveo KB300PRO, and then over here is my video switcher, the Osee GoStream Duet 8 ISO. And that has the preview monitor up, and I also have my main computer up with the software that is running the PTZ camera, which is an LV20N. It's an NDI camera from Avkans. Now, as you might imagine, these are very powerful tools, with a lot of features built in, and I am not being sponsored by any of these companies. I couldn't decide exactly which controller that I wanted. I will be getting more of these PTZ cameras, and I did go with Avkans specifically because, well, they're a little bit more affordable and full-featured than their Tenveo counterparts. And that was my main motivation for my camera choice. But the controllers do have some really nice features. I wish there was a way I could smash these two together where I can get the features of each controller into one controller, and maybe that'll be in a future controller. But unfortunately, there are some trade-offs with some of the features. And let's start off with the Tenveo KB300PRO. So here we have the Tenveo KB300PRO, and it's set up right now for the primary view, and you got your basic controls. You have your joystick here. You have the ability to go and zoom in with this 4D axis here. Left and right works just fine. I can control the camera. I have red gain, blue gain, iris shutter gain, zoom speed, and PT speed. All those work. I am currently using VISCA UDP is the protocol. You can use NDI, but you don't get all of the controls here. You can access the OSD menu of an Avkans here by pressing the menu here with this protocol. All right, and then you can navigate through there. We have automatic zoom. Well, we have the automatic focus here. We can set it for far, for near, exposure, white balance. I usually leave everything to auto there. And the cool thing now is that if you go and you push on the Cam 1 button or whatever camera that you're on currently, you press it again, and then you're going to get this four-way. Right now I only have one camera, obviously, but we can see this multi-view, which is very, very handy, especially on this very large 7-inch screen. So unfortunately, there is a limitation with this controller, and it makes sense because when you have 4 individual feeds on a single view like that, if you were streaming at 1080p, that would be a very high bandwidth that you would need in order to maintain that. So they do limit this multi-view to only 720p and 30 frames a second. But the way that you can get around making this work, we would go back to the setup menu here. When you set up your device, so in this case, I'm just going to go and navigate to what I have set the Avkans camera to. And as you can see, I'm using VISCA UDP with the IP and the port and all that stuff. But what's interesting here, so the RTSP URL, we have, there's the, that's the setup here with the IP. The port is 554 for an Avkans by default. But now I'm using /sub, which means the Substream. Up until about 2 days ago, I had no idea that PTZ cameras, or cameras in general apparently, streaming cameras, have a mainstream and a substream. You can go over to this Avkans software here, and as you can see, I have the mainstream set to 1080p and 60 frames a second, and then we can go down to the substream, and this is where you can set it to 720p there, or even as small as 640 by 360, and 30 frames a second. And that is what the Tenveo is currently using on the screen here in order to be able to use the multi-view. Should you not want to use the multi-view, you may not need it, then you can just use the mainstream, and the main, let me go back over here, the main view, that instead of looking at all 4, can output 1080p, in which you can actually see a slight difference. Maybe if I take the light away, that you could tell that this screen is a little bit more whitewashed than the one over here on the Avkans, because the Avkans is looking at the mainstream. This one's looking at the Substream at 720p. There is a little less bit of a bit rate set up for the Substream just to save bandwidth. So it could not look as good as the mainstream, for example. But again, this is meant as a preview so you can see what you're doing. If you're streaming to your switcher here, this is showing in 1080p 60 frames a second. Finally, on a limitation, which may not apply to you depending on how you are going to be using your cameras. If you have a camera like this one here that has AI tracking capability, you do not have the ability to turn it on from a controller like this unless it is on the OSD menu, which the Tenveo PTZ cameras with AI tracking do, so you can turn it on from here. On the Avkans camera or Avkans, they do not provide that ability on their OSD menu, and it makes sense as the reasoning why is that it seems a little clunky to them. It's a little inconvenient to have to go and turn it on that way, and they recommend using the IR remote, and then you turn on and off here, headshot, upper body shot, or full body shot. Moving over here to the Avkans controller here, this is their Pro controller, and I find that the joysticks between the two, this one is a lot more fluid, a lot more loose. I'm using the same exact protocol. I believe I'm using VISCA UDP on this one as well. This one is slightly more stiff, but it does feel just as responsive. However, this one is just far easier to move around. This one feels a little bit stiffer. That's just mostly preference, but you do get the same exact controllability there. That's one of the differences. Obviously here we have a smaller screen going on than the Tenveo, which is just a beautiful big 7-inch screen, especially for guys like me that have not the best eyes in the world, but a 5-inch screen does well. And the other good thing about the Avkans controller is that you have this as a touch screen. You can move everything around here, all the different settings within the controller here, and this does not have the multi-view as the Tenveo does. You are using the mainstream, so this preview that you're looking at here is a full 1080p, although at a 5-inch screen you're really not going to notice that much of a difference, but you essentially get the same kind of controls. Lenny up here has done a very good job going over some of the advanced features here. One of the things that I do like about this that the Tenveo does not is that this one has custom VISCA messages. So if I was to take off the preview here and then you see some of the CMD1, CMD2, these are the custom commands that you can actually do, which actually supports the start and stopping of your AI tracking. You can then go to the different ones here and actually specify using a built-in QWERTY keyboard that comes up on the touchscreen the different hex codes, if you know what they are, based on what the manufacturer provides. If there is a command outside of the standard VISCA protocol that you want to be able to trigger or use, you can set up these function buttons here to trigger those custom commands. That is very important, especially if you are not using the same brand camera as you are the controller. That just gives you a lot more flexibility, and while I don't really like the smaller screen, I can live with it. And like on the Tenveo, if I wanted to get access to the OSD screen, all I would have to do is press that button, go back to the preview, and then we have the camera OSD screen. You can't turn it off here unless you get out of the preview and then you turn it off like that. Obviously, if I go back now, then it's off. Just a small minor note there. Final word here on the Avkans controller. I mentioned before about using the IR remote for the AI tracking. You can turn on AI tracking using the custom commands. The start and stop commands are already part of your F2 and F3. I think I moved those around, but you do have the ability to choose which ones from this list. However, to set up either if it's a headshot, or upper body shot or a full body shot, you actually have to set the preset of one, and then there's actually, here I'll put it up on the screen because actually it's a little bit more complicated than I realized. I still think I would use the IR remote even though that this has the built-in custom messaging. It's just not as easy as I thought it would be to turn on AI tracking. And again, I don't know if I'm going to really be using it that much. My main purpose that I'm going to be using this setup for is not just for YouTube live streaming, but also to record live bands when I get more of these cameras. That way I can either leave one camera on the singer and then the other cameras I can move as I please, and it just makes things to be a lot easier. So at the end of the day, which one am I going to wind up keeping? Well, here's my reasoning. I already have a multi-view for my NDIs. If I have my NDIs all enabled here, then I can look at them right here on my multi-view window of the GoStream. So I really don't need the multi-view here on the Tenveo. And while I do like the larger screen, it really just is redundant. That's really the main reason why I'm going to wind up returning this one and keeping the Avkans. I think with the Avkans, I'll have to sacrifice and get a smaller screen, but I get the touchscreen. I have the custom messaging for other cameras. If it's not an Avkans, it could be a Tenveo, it could be something different. And I have pretty much the same kind of functionality as I do between the two controllers. That being said, this is still a very worthy controller. And if you are interested in grabbing it, they are definitely worth the money. At the time of recording this video, there are no firmware updates. It has the most current, this ships with the most current firmware. I have not found any bugs with it. This one does have a firmware update. So right before you even start using it, go ahead to Avkans website and then update the firmware using the USB Type-C in the back. And then that should get you going without any problems. I have not found any bugs since then. Looking forward to digging into this a little bit more. If there's any questions on this particular controller or either of them, please let me know. I'm going to end the video here, but hopefully in the next time I do a video like this, that this will be a lot more established without all this spaghetti of wires. But thank you guys so much for watching and supporting my channel. See you guys in the next one.